The United States makes the UN work when it wants it to work. And that is exactly the way it should be, because the only question to the United States is what's in our national interest.
My name is John, and the International Criminal Court is back in session. I didn't want to do this video because I just saw no point in doing so, but because a good chunk of you have been demanding me to do another one, I will oblige. So, Iran war. 5 months old, still ongoing, and we were so close to ending this whole thing for good in June. And then Donald Trump just felt, I don't feel like ending this conflict. No. My ego was wounded, and I don't like losing. I don't like losing very much. And as a result, the war has resumed basically as it has been before April of 2026. The air war is still ongoing, and despite Donald Trump's threats to properly invade Iran or Karg Island all by itself, nothing has materialized. So the US and Iran signed this memorandum of understanding, which was signed by both countries, but then the United States didn't up their end of the deal. If anything, I think Netanyahu threatened Trump. Like, I think he told him, if you don't continue this war, I'm going to release the Epstein files. Like, I'll have the Mossad release them and end you once and for all. And I think that's why he continued the war. So, it collapsed completely by July of 2026, and as a result, everything just resumed as normal before that ceasefire in April of 2026. Pakistan looked like clowns as a result, and even though Trump was able to get a ceasefire between Israel and the Hezbollah within Lebanon, it still feels fragile. It feels like Israel's going to break it any day, and that there's not really much people can really do about, that. I'm sorry, I just don't want to do this video. But again, I'm doing it because you guys requested me to do so politely, and I just felt like this was a good chunk of important info to share. I also don't know if any of you are aware, but the Yemen civil war has resumed. I've heard there have been clashes between the Houthi militias and the pro-Saudi regime militias in turn. And as a result of the recent escalations taking place in Yemen, Bab el-Mandeb has been closed off by the Houthis. And as you expect, the Houthis are up to their old shenanigans again in the Red Sea, intercepting or trying to sink vessels that pass by them. As you imagine, the United States is really infuriated by all of this. And they have been trying to get the Saudis to wipe out the Houthis again. But so far, nothing has worked. Now, the only country it feels like that's like the most trustworthy to Iran is Oman. Oman, for some reason, is like other than Qatar, like the only country in the Middle East that somewhat has okay relations with Iran. Because Iran does not trust Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and Arab Emirates, and reasonably so. And from what I understand, if a deal were to ever be properly reached, Oman would share the Strait of Hormuz with Iran and nobody else. They would be powerless against the Persians. On August 8th, the IRGC stated that opening the Hormuz is not dependent on talks with Oman, but rather on the United States accepting Iran's conditions, which makes a lot of sense. And they outlined conditions for the U.S. to fulfill before reopening the Hormuz, including a commitment from the U.S. to cease threats against Iran, end wars involving non-state allies like Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis, lift the naval blockade of Iranian ports, withdraw U.S. troops, compensate for losses from the 12-day war and the current war, remove all sanctions, and release all Iranian frozen assets, which the United States, of course, has refused to do. And Iran has also rejected direct negotiations with the U.S. government, accusing violations to the MOU, which I definitely concur with them on, adding that messages are being exchanged through intermediaries, and efforts are underway to establish a ground for talks. Trump stated that he instructed U.S. negotiators to demand repartitions from the Iranian regime for the Americans it has killed and seriously injured in times of conflict. You started this war, what do you expect? As well as the families of the protesters who were slain in Iran, falsely claiming that it was involved on the attack on the USS Cole. That was done by Al-Qaeda, sir. And that the regime should also be held accountable for the damages and deaths inflicted to Palestinians, Lebanese, as well as Syrians and Yemenis. Again, all bullshit. Trump's lying out of his ass and trying to avoid looking like a loser here. The Houthis recently attacked a cargo vessel in the Bab al-Mandeb, killing 6 crew members. And meanwhile, the U.S. fired at the rudder of a Panama-flagged vessel that attempted to overcome its naval blockade of Iran while passing via the Gulf of Oman, which is not far from the Strait of Hormuz. A rocket assault targeted an Iranian Kurdish opposition camp in the vicinity of Erbil, Iraq. And according to the stats, the American-Israeli coalition fired 3,580 total missiles and bombs, drones, whatever, at Iran and their allies since February 28th, while Iran has dealt 2,036. And this is a map of the strikes taking place from each side. This is U.S.-Israeli strikes map. And then this is the map of strikes conducted by the Persians. Northern Iraq, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia. Oil prices are also going up again, everybody. As you would expect. This is not good. So since February, it went from $60 something all the way up to $114 at its peak in late March. It went back down to $83 during the ceasefire or so. It climbed up again and again, and then it really went down in June and remained that way until July, when Donald Trump just felt, again, as I said earlier in the video, he didn't want to look like a loser. So he restarted the war, and oil prices started going back up again. And according to oilprice.com, WTI crude is at $83.77 per barrel. Brent crude is at $89.48 per barrel. Murban crude is $89.10 per barrel. And then going all the way down, the Russian oil is $81.81. It was actually going considerably down for a while, but because of Donald Trump being a total idiot again, the Russian oil prices basically returned to what they were. I guess, I don't know. I don't know if it ever got to 90 or 100 or so dollars per barrel, but right now, this price is something that Vladimir Putin definitely likes. As long as it's over $70, it's good news for Russia, even if their economy is a little slow right now. Now, as for maps, I'm not really going to load too much here, but as far as I know, United States has not really conducted anything against Iran. nor their allies. And there hasn't also been a lot of movement in Yemen, despite the clashes renewing between the Houthis and the pro-Saudi regime. So as a result, I'm not going to bother with too much maps. I mean, the only maps you'll see here are, of course, this. Again, this is a map. This one is provided by Wikipedia of them striking all sorts of targets by the U.S., that is, within Iran. And then everything in red here is targeted by the Persians. Oh, yeah, and I forgot they hit Jordan too recently, which is amazing. So yeah, I don't really got much to say on this other than the fact that I think Donald Trump should stop this war, and if he doesn't, then his defeat in the midterms this November is going to get uglier, and he'll look like a complete dumbass for even doing any of this in the first place. So that's going to be it for today's video, everybody. I'll see you all in the next one. We'll be going back to Ukraine, and I hope every single one of you has a great day. So take good care of yourselves and peace out. Bye-bye.